Fortnite is one of the biggest games to ever be released in the world. You can ask pretty much anyone and they'll recognize the name. And if you were fortunate enough to play during the early stages of the game, you probably have many good memories playing with your friends, reminiscing on the good old days. But it's been over 6 years since the release of the game and a lot has changed. And most players who used to play every day now haven't touched the game in years. But recently, Epic Games came up with an idea to get those old players to hop back on one last time. And that's by dedicating an entire season to going back in time to when the game was still in its adolescence and give players one last opportunity to relive their old memories on the Chapter 1 map. Now, before getting into why this won't work out, we need to first ask, what was it that made the early years of Fortnite so nostalgic, and how did the game get so big in the first place? Fortnite started development all the way back in 2011, but it wasn't until July of 2017 where the game would first get released. Now, when the game first came out, it wasn't actually Battle Royale back then, and it was Save the World. In this version of the game, you would team up and build your own base in order to fight off a zombie horde. So it was like if you combined Minecraft with Left 4 Dead. Now, this version of the game was doing pretty good, with players having fun on it, and after 1 month since the game's release, they hit over 1 million players who had bought in the game. Now, even though this was really good, Epic wanted the game to be even bigger. So they were trying to come up with a way to add some type of PvP aspect to the game. And around this time, there was one type of game that was absolutely blowing up, and that was Battle Royales. Games like H1Z1 and PUBG were at their peak and players loved this style of game. So Epic decided to try and capitalize on this by creating their own version of a Battle Royale in Fortnite. And only 2 months later, after the original release of the game, they officially put out Fortnite Battle Royale for free so anyone could play. And it was an instant success, with it reaching over 10 million players in just 2 weeks of release. Hopping into the game for the first time, you had no idea what you were doing. And the beauty of it all was most of your opponents didn't either. That's what made the game so fun to new players. Nobody really knew how to properly play the game, so when you got a kill or even a win, it felt amazing.
Behind you! No! Go! Hit it for 150!
And after that win, when you would go back to the lobby to queue up again, you would hear this music. Tell me that doesn't instantly bring you back to the good old days. So with everyone enjoying the game, word started to spread quickly, and with the game being completely free, it was easily accessible to everyone, which led players to try it out even if they thought they wouldn't like it. As the game started to grow more and more popular, we would see large creators try out the game like Ninja and Summit1G. But most importantly, this game would make some of the largest creators, with there being too many to even name. Another thing that made many people want to try it out in the first place was how different the game was. Nobody had really seen a Battle Royale with these graphics and bright colors. And because of the game the way it looked, it was more appealing to kids and even adults. Where H1Z1 and PUBG were strictly rated M. And also, we can't forget the mechanic that would change the game, building. But we'll get into that later. So now, with more eyes on the game than anyone ever expected, Epic would release the first season of Fortnite on October 26, 2017. And not long after, Fortnite would officially surpass PUBG as the highest viewed Battle Royale on Twitch. And later on, with the release of Season 2, Fortnite would overtake League of Legends, becoming the most streamed and viewed game on the website. It was also around now where players were starting to use the building mechanic more and more. So those who started to master it early on would end up seeing huge success because of how good they were, with the best example of this probably being Myth. And the records on Twitch for the game wouldn't stop here. In March of 2018, Ninja would end up playing with Drake live on stream, reaching over 600,000 live concurrent viewers, breaking the record at that time. With this collab being so popular, if Fortnite wasn't already in the mainstream, it 100% was now. And Epic would make sure to capitalize on all this success. During this time, to help players keep interest in the game, they would release new updates almost every week with huge changes to the game, while also adding quality of life updates as well. Don't get me wrong, there were definitely some very bad ones, but overall they were very positive. So with them continuously adding new items to the game every week, it helped to make the game fresh, and with that created insane moments that would continuously go viral, making more and more people want to try out the game. Another way they decided to continue the hype was to have their first huge competition, which would be the Fortnite Pro AM, where big Fortnite creators and pros would team up with celebrities to compete for $3 million in charity money. And towards the end of Season 4, Fortnite would try something no game has ever attempted, and that would be a live event. This would mark the first of many throughout the game, and with this never being done before, players would fall more in love with the game. But Epic would actually release a game mode only 3 days before this event that would unknowingly spark the downfall of the game, and that would be the introduction to Playgrounds. Playgrounds was a game mode where you and your friends could hop into the Fortnite island and just do whatever you want for 4 hours. So with this edition, players started to PG for the first time, hence why it's called that. Players would start to build battle with each other, and the more they did so, the better they would get. So once they headed back into the Battle Royale mode, they got way better. And before, it would take you months to get decent at building by just playing the game. But now, you could practice for just a week or two and achieve the same skill level. So because of this, the players who had more time to put into the game would get extremely good, creating a massive skill gap for the first time in this game's history. Before, when new players decided to try out the game, it was easy for them to play since the rest of the players were also quite bad. But now with this huge skill gap, new players had a harder time, which led them to just not want to play the game anymore. Epic would quickly notice this, and they weren't happy since they wanted new players to try out the game. So in order to combat the players that were good at building, in Season 5 they decided to buff SMGs, in order to give noobs a leg up on their opponents. But who would have thought it would end horribly? So now they made it so SMGs were insanely broken, where bullets would still hit players even when building. And on top of that, they would also get rid of the beloved double pump strat. And the SMG was so bad that noobs were even complaining about how broken the game was. Now in Season 6, they would finally nerf SMGs, but they would add the addition of zombies to the game that just made it super annoying to play. And players would begin to get fed up. Now even though this was annoying, going into Season 7, nobody was ready for what was about to happen. Epic Games would introduce a new item that is arguably the most broken one in the game ever, which would be the Infinity Blade. And I don't have to explain how broken this item was, you can just see this background footage for yourself. And on top of that, this is when creative mode would be added for the first time, giving players a chance to create their own custom maps. And this would make the problem Playgrounds implemented much worse, with players now easily being able to practice more effectively, making an even larger skill gap than before. In Season 8, the game would decrease in popularity even more. However, in Season 9, the World Cup would be announced, the largest event in gaming history, gaining a peak viewership of over 2.3 million viewers. So now, with lots of hype surrounding the game, next season needed to be good in order to capitalize on all this hype. But as I'm sure you all know, Season X would be riddled with mechs that just made the game unplayable for those who wanted to play it normally. So now, with the popularity of the game decreasing every season, on October 13th, 2019, we would have the largest in-game event with the infamous Black Hole. And after 2 days of not being able to play the game, they would release Chapter 2. But unfortunately, this wouldn't work as well as Epic hoped it would. Shortly after the release of this season, Fortnite would go back down to the same popularity it was before the Black Hole event. And it didn't help that this season was 128 days long, with there barely being any updates or tournaments to play in game. And because of this, we would see players like Clicks start to grow in popularity in box fights and other creative modes that would help players get better. And as expected, with a bunch of players for months straight purely grinding to get better in creative, it was once again where the skill gap would increase. Now in Season 2, Fortnite would have another spike up, with this season being a lot of players' favorites. On top of that, COVID was happening at this time, so many people were stuck at home. So because of that, more players would hop on the game again to give it another test run, but eventually these players would leave as well. And from then on, it seemed like Fortnite wouldn't have another massive spike, with most of their largest creators leaving the game as well. But in Chapter 3, Season 2, we would see a massive influx of old players and content creators. That's because Epic decided to add a new zero build game mode. And this idea was really good and worked well. But this would create a split in the player base. Now the players who were more advanced could play the original builds game mode, and new or old players who don't play very often could also have fun where they just don't have to worry about building. Now obviously after a while the spike from this would go down, but it was a really good addition that resulted in players staying. And since then, Epic has added more items and features to make this game mode more fun. But now that brings us to the present, where Epic has announced for roughly 1 month we will have an entire season dedicated to playing on the old Chapter 1 map. And rightfully so, a lot of players, old and new, are extremely excited to test things out and take a trip down memory lane. But this attempt to get players to come back to the game will ultimately fail. Don't get me wrong, I'm super excited to play like everyone else, but this is clearly Epic's last chance to get players to come back. And there's many reasons why this won't work. First off, as I've mentioned many times throughout this video, the main reason why players stopped in the first place is because the skill gap is just way too big now. Most players don't have the time to spend hours on this game just to get decent at building, and figuring out new skills players who have been playing for years have. Now you might be saying, well, what about zero builds? Now this is where I do expect a lot of the old players to go to once the season comes out. And according to leakers, Epic has actually added more ziplines to the old map in order to make places more accessible in zero builds. But more likely than not, these players already tried out this zero build game mode when it was first released, and well, they still left anyway. Why would playing on an old map for a few weeks change anything and make them want to stay? But another really good reason why Epic is doing this in the first place is that they can market the release of Chapter 5, which is supposed to happen in December, right after this OG season. So in order to bring more hype around it, this is a really good time for them to release this season. Now, I would love to be wrong about this, but I think it's safe to say that players will return one last time to play the game and quickly realize the reason why they ended up leaving in the first place. And eventually, those who have been playing for a while will continue on, while those who came back will leave once again, probably to never return. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. No game will last forever, and eventually we will all leave this game and move on. So even though Fortnite isn't as popular to some as it used to be, the game is doing better than ever. It won't be going anywhere for a very, very long time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below your opinion on this topic. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your days. Peace out.